Welcome to Current Affairs. My name is Nathan Robinson. I am the editor-in-chief of Current Affairs magazine. I am joined today by Kat Abughazaleh. She is one of the leading critics of the American right. Specifically, she is a producer of some fantastic videos going through and documenting the various hideous and morally repugnant absurdities that appear daily in right-wing media. And she is formerly of Media Matters for America, and we're going to discuss why formerly and what is happening to organizations like Media Matters for America. Kat, thank you for joining us on Current Affairs today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I suppose the first thing I want to do is thank you for your service, because you endure. Your bio on Twitter says that you watch Fox News so that the rest of us don't have to. So perhaps you could begin by telling our listeners and our readers some of what you do endure on a regular basis.
It's kind of fun if you're the specific brain type that, if you're a masochist, that's what it is. It's kind of fun if you're a masochist. So what I was doing,
other people would not have fun doing what you do.
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Media Matters, I was on night shift, which was like, a small team, and we all got along really well. Like there was never any conflict on night shift. And that's because our brains were all, broken in the same way. We knew so many things about Dan Bongino and Brian Kilmeade that the average person, even the pretty fervent Fox viewer, just wouldn't know. I know about Sean Hannity's eclectic blend of martial arts that he does, including Pain Day, which is a regular day on his schedule where he gets his sensei to beat the shit out of him.
You cannot take a joke, okay? You're this mixed martial arts champion, as far as champion in my mind.
Yeah, that's what I do.
And no, but you can't take.
What we do on Pain Day? So my sensei, this is to calcify your arms, and then I have to. I do all that.
Do I wish I knew that? No. Do I know that? Forever.
So, yes, you really are. It's kind of fascinating, the knowledge that you now have, because you have watched so much Fox News. As I understand it, you would watch the prime time schedule of Fox News, look for important, I mean things to cover or ridiculous things to cover, note it down. Or maybe you could tell us more about your kind of process here.
Yeah, so my job when I was on night shift was to watch Fox 4 to 11. All of us had different shows that we watched regularly, but people would get out sick, or you just got tired of listening to Hannity's voice. I watched Laura Ingraham for the first couple months when I was at Media Matters, and then moved to Hannity. Watching Hannity is its own special type of mind melt. It gets to a point after a couple weeks where you can do an entire 20-minute Sean Hannity monologue just off the cuff. He says the same shit every single night. And then I moved on to Tucker Carlson, who, then got fired. So since then, I've been watching The Five a lot. And the entire shift is, 4 to 11, the big primetime hours. You just really you build up this knowledge. When you first start, it's kind of hard because you're trying to figure out these inside jokes that others in the field might have, or what the hell someone's talking about. There's a lot of lore in the Fox News and the right-wing mediaverse. There's so much lore, and all of it is useless. But when you do this job, you learn all of it.
And you also learn something. You said there that, once you've watched enough Sean Hannity monologues, you could basically do one. You had a video, you covered the Fox News Awards, which is their little sad
the Patriot
little
Awards.
Show. The Patriot Awards that they do because they can't get into, as you said, the real awards shows. And you pointed out that Sean Hannity's monologue from 1 year to the next year was eerily identical. So you start to notice these bizarre kind of the patterns.
Yeah, it was mortifying to realize that I knew that Sean Hannity's monologue this year, I was watching it and I was like, that's the exact same one he did last year. Because he thought no one would notice, and no one did, except Me.
Yeah.
Or like when Jimmy Fallon wrote his book, The Cancel Culture Dictionary, there were so many one-liners in there that I was like, oh my God, he said that in Laura Ingraham last summer. And like, that's not something fun to know about yourself.
No.
But yeah, they just repeat the same shit. And especially Sean Hannity. Oh my God.
In the kind of world that we want to live in, no one would have the knowledge that you know. But
no one would go to the Patriot Awards either.
No,
I mean, I'm still devastated I didn't win Most Valuable Patriot.
It's a shame. You were robbed. Next year. But you also, another thing that I remember is I watching some of your videos on conservative comedy. There's like jokes. There's the same joke that occurs whether you covered Rob Schneider's comedy special, you covered Roseanne Barr's comedy special, and the conservative comedy has its oftentimes just the same joke told 5 different ways.
Yeah, I identify as insert something that is not a gender, or I mean, my pronouns are blank and blank. My favorite thing is to respond to that person if they're like, my pronouns are the United States, and then refer to United as states. And states get really confused on that. But it's the same jokes all the time. It's so annoying. It's not that they're offensive, because like they're so bad that it's just kind of laughable. Conservative comedy bothers me because it's so low effort. Like my college stand-up had more time and thought dedicated to my dumbest bits than a single monologue written by Greg Gutfeld's non-unionized writers. And that's just not how it should be. And then they claim that no one's laughing because they're so offended, and it's because they suck. And I just think, they should have to address their own failures.
But what I like about what sort of comes of this total immersion over time is that, as you've been describing, you start to understand how the propaganda machine works. I mean, Fox News is very powerful. People might ask, and I'm sure they do ask you, why would you do this? Why would you subject yourself to this? Is this really important? These people are so full of shit. This is so lazy. But I think it is important because, I mean, there's studies that show that when Fox News comes into a market, it turns the audience more conservative in that city or town. It's very, very effective. So what have you come to understand about how this propaganda is put together?
I mean, the thing that I think a lot of people ignore when it comes to this stuff is the danger in Fox News. Is the most watched cable news channel, but sure, the audience skews on the older side, and you can just look at the ads to know that. But the chokehold it has over the GOP. My old boss Andrew Lawrence used to say, Roger Ailes started Fox to help the GOP, and now the GOP is doing everything it can do to get on Fox. Like it's inverted, it's flipped upside down. When Tucker was on Fox News, every single thing the GOP did was to get 2 minutes on Tucker's show. Everything. And he was dictating policy. I mean, you think about when Kevin McCarthy was running for speaker and they did 15 votes? That's because Tucker held the speakership hostage. He listed demands for the House Speaker. And until McCarthy agreed to meet those demands, the vote didn't go through. And that's a cable news host that is holding the 3rd most powerful position in the country hostage. To get the January 6th tapes, that was one thing Tucker really wanted, and Kevin McCarthy gave them to him. He also wanted a Frank Church-style committee to investigate how big tech is attacking conservatives, led by Thomas Massie. And then Massie came on Friday after Kevin McCarthy was elected speaker to thank Tucker for getting him that committee. And so it's less to that point now. I mean, you have things that show up on Fox News are coming up in the GOP and vice versa, DEI, all of these things about, drag brunches and banning that. It's less centralized now that Tucker is interviewing Cat Turd.
People might not know what that sentence that you've just spoken means.
I hope they don't, but it's Tucker's irrelevant now. Fox didn't need Tucker. Tucker needed Fox, despite what Alex Jones said last week on his show with Tucker. But it's it's more about how Fox informs the right-wing political apparatus, and it shows what's being introduced into the mainstream, because there's stuff from the far right that once you see it on Fox, that's how you know the window is shifted.
Tell us about some of those things then, and about what Fox News is trying to do to its audience, because there's a Fox News kind of method. You cover, I mean, you've done this feature where each week, you highlight stories that appear on Fox that don't appear anywhere else, and there seems to be a common technique that underlies all of this, which is like, here's a thing that you should be mad about. I mean, that's basically right. That's kind of the method, right? Here's a thing. Now you need to be angry, and here's some people for you to hate.
Exactly. And, it's different hosts have different strategies for this. Like I said, when Tucker was there, he was really good at this. He had like almost like a week-long schedule he would do to slowly introduce a topic. For example, when the theory that 80,000 IRS agents were going to audit you at gunpoint. But now you have different hosts. There's less of that centralization, but you look at, for example, when Trans Day of Visibility landed on Easter this year, and it's just, you're being attacked with it every hour, saying Joe Biden is transing Easter, and that makes no sense. But you go to Easter dinner that night, and you're going to hear from your grandfather about how Easter's trans now. And it's kind of like repetition. And I don't want to be like, oh, everything's Orwellian, but when you actually read like 1984, I was like, damn, that's a really good tactic to make people think a certain way.
Well, and one of the benefits of having your work out there is that, and having someone like you watching Fox News so that the rest of us don't have to, is that it prepares us. I mean, you mentioned, encountering a relative at dinner. You kind of, you can anticipate what people are going to be saying on the other side, because the kinds of stories that have gotten big, that have blown up in conservative world, that if you don't live in that world and you don't watch Fox News, you have no idea that there are millions of people who are mad about. You might be going about your day not realizing that millions of people are mad that the what was this Tucker's thing, the one of the M&Ms wasn't sexy enough, like
that was a real problem. That's a really bad part of America. I think we can all agree. We're glad that nightmare's over.
Well, so you help people understand that so they're not blindsided when these things come about, because they're bubbling there.
Right, and it's also like helping people realize that, on my weekly recaps, I always introduce it by, here are 5 totally real and definitely not made up stories, sarcastically. So they kind of know what to look for. I remember, this wasn't on Fox, but it was on other conspiracy channels at the time, about how Wayfair was shipping children in boxes based. Do you remember that? About the furniture company Wayfair. What? There was this conspiracy theory.
Shipping children?
They were shipping children, like, QAnon style. Like, you would order, like a Claudette or whatever on Wayfair, and then it was actually code to get a child shipped to your doorstep. And I remember I was trying on a pair of shoes at the mall when I was visiting my mom, and the guy that was helping me with the shoes was like, so did you hear about that Wayfair thing? And I was like, no, that's not real, honey. That's not real. And so it's some of the shit where you just have to be like, that's not a thing that's happening. Squatting is not people coming into your house and taking it. That's not what squatting is. Your house is not going to be overrun by migrant squatters. That's not real. Like, it's so many of these things are just not real. And sometimes it's one of those things where you just have to, someone you love says it, you just have to look at it and be like, that's not happening. Like, I'm not trying to gaslight you. You are just literally saying something that is not happening.
It's really very sad, though, also, because there have been all these news reports about how, this poison that is put in people's brains. I mean, it destroys families. People talk about how their relative that they loved and was a totally normal, loving, wonderful person now just watches Fox News all day, and all they can do is rant. And the level of paranoia and terror on this network. I mean, trying to convince people. There was the story about the guy who watched Fox News, and then the guy, the young was it the teenage black kid came to his door and rang the doorbell and just shot him because like he's just sitting there in absolute terror that there are people coming for you, which seems to be like one of the core Fox News messages is like just be afraid.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're caught up on this season of The Boys. The first 3 episodes came out last week. But they have, really great writing on there. I mean, it's really, if you haven't watched it, to anyone listening, it's basically what if superheroes were real, but they were all owned by Fox News. Amazing show. And one of the things in this one, they have almost like an InfoWars type conference in this season. And, they're like, what are you selling to the girl that's in charge of all of it? And she says, purpose, because these people don't want to think that they're just going to die and no one's going to remember them, or which isn't even true. A lot of these people have loved ones, but everything is so big and scary now that you want to feel like, you're the victim or you're the warrior or you're fighting against evil, because that's seems a lot more exciting or purposeful than the reality.
Which is that there aren't monsters.
There aren't monsters
in the world, and
it
a lot
just
of people
turns
that
out
you
that
think are monsters are just normal people.
Exactly. And a lot of the cabals aren't there to eat children. It's just evil people kind of gravitate towards each other. Sucky people like to hang out with each other. Well,
tell us then, for those of us who haven't exposed ourselves to a similar amount of this stuff, if I was to watch Fox News for a week in the prime time, what are the sorts of things that I could expect to see? What's a kind of typical week of stories?
I mean, things have really, flared up, but with a bunch of different big stories between like the, Trump verdicts and Hunter Biden and all this stuff, but definitely something about Hunter Biden. Doesn't matter what it is. Something about Hunter Biden. We all know that's who we're voting for. If in this election, it is Donald Trump versus Hunter Biden. Something about DEI, especially if there's anything that happened on a plane, someone's going to blame that on hiring too many Black people.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So like the air traffic control thing is not like a labor story. It's a DEI
it's not a labor story about how Reagan fucked up the entire airline industry. Even now, 40 years later, it's a story of how DEI, about diversity and equity initiatives, are making airlines hire unqualified Black people. And therefore, that's why Boeing has all the doors fly off their planes, despite the fact that all pilots have to have the exact same qualifications, and that a very small percentage of them already, the white pilots are hired because they're smarter. It's the reason that there's a race disparity, or the reason that there are equity initiatives in the first, sorry, this gets me so pissed off. The reason there are equity initiatives in the first place are because there is a racial disparity that doesn't give opportunities to people who are qualified. But to Fox, that's, doors are flying off of planes because too many Black people. So you'll definitely hear something about that. And, the trans people are trying to gay your kids or whatever.
There's a cartoon that I always like, which features Rupert Murdoch and an immigrant and a worker. And Rupert Murdoch has a big plate of cookies, and I think the immigrant has one cookie, and then Rupert Murdoch's telling the worker, that immigrant's trying to take your cookie. And meanwhile Murdoch has this giant pile, and what you talked about there indicates something that's really important about a media organization like this, which is the attempt to redirect people's ire away from the actual power elite. That is to say, the Boeing story, we know the Boeing story is a story of corporate malfeasance, a story of the pursuit of profit at the expense of safety. It's actually a pretty clear-cut story. It's a great kind of parable of how capitalism will kill you because people will cut corners in order to make more money. And yet that can be reframed and shifted to point to those who have absolutely no power and say they are trying to crash your planes and kill your children and putting everything you care about at risk.
Right. I mean, totally. And, it's completely ignoring like international politics, like not even touching that. just the national stuff, the way that Fox treats labor unions and just, or straight up ignores gigantic labor movements here, is, it's disgusting. Your audience is supposed to be, they love to fetishize the working class and the middle class and how we're all, good American boys here. It's like you're spitting in the face of anything that could help what you hope to be your audience, what you're idealizing as your audience. And that's something that a lot of boomers do in the first place. And I grew up in Texas, where union is a bad word. And it's they really do, not just Fox, but all of American power structures do as much as they can to get us to want what's worst for ourselves.
Well, I think that's a really important point, because one of the themes that I got from watching a number of your videos is the.
I'm so sorry, by the way. Your brain must have like a lot of weird thoughts in it.
I mean, I learned about a whole number of things that I didn't know existed. I didn't know there was a right-wing Amazon. I didn't know Mike Huckabee had like an online. Oh God, I can't even describe what the scam thing is that he has. But
it's wild.
I bring it up because one of the themes that came out from watching your videos is the amount of cynicism and contempt towards the audience. Like, a lot of this is a big grift, in that, like, they are trying to suck money out of what is Michael Flynn's thing? He has a wild thing that you cover that he sells. You could get like unvaccinated blood or something.
Yeah, blood, cum, breast milk, and children. And it's like, I'm doing a follow-up on that video, and the script is getting out of control. I'm at like 10,000 words now. But they do have contempt for their audience. That's what it is. They talk about how like the anti-intellectualism movement, like, it's so dangerous. I think it is one of the most dangerous things in our country right now. And it's being led by people like Fox News hosts, who all have college educations, who all have degrees. I remember it was like Jesse Waters or Will Kane. No, it was Pete Hegseth talking about Donald Trump with another guest. All three of those guys went to Ivies. All of them were studying history or literature. It's so hypocritical. And by targeting education, like what they're doing with, charter schools, what they're doing with, DEI, taking out CRT, book bans, all of this stuff, it's because they want you to want what's worst for yourself. I mean, so many of our parents, especially if you're a woman, if you're someone of color, have died, have uprooted their entire lives to give us education. And Fox News is getting people to turn it away voluntarily. And that's what they want. They want you to be uneducated.
Well, I remember when Gretchen Carlson was on Fox News. She went to like Stanford and Oxford, and yet she would like play a moron on Fox News. She pretended that she didn't know what the word ignoramus or czar meant. She would like fake, she'd just play a dummy on purpose, because that's what they and you point out that you have one video where you
used to do that too. He used to go, I don't even know what stochastic means. That's not even a real word. And it's like, you know what that means, because you're inspiring.
And you played one of Jesse Waters' monologues where he talks about education, and there's just the very idea, they're trying to educate you. Don't read, and nothing's in those books. Don't look at those books. But also you had a compilation, something about like the like Girl Boss Day on Fox, where you compiled a number of the most like outright misogynistic quotes on Fox, and it was really like 1940s or 50s culture. Like, you can see that like Roger Ailes built this place, like just a predator.
And like, they're still doing this shit. Jesse Waters just said, like, fathers aren't responsible for raising their daughters. And then he was like, I just give my daughters whatever they want. But like, he spent, before he made that little, fun punchline at the end, he spent like 2 minutes talking about how fathers are responsible for making sure their sons are, good men with integrity and, education, intellect, and all these things. And it's like, my daughters, I give them whatever they want, just ignoring your daughters. You don't even have to worry about them having integrity. You don't have to worry about anything that they will do to society, because their impact is negligible to these people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do want to just take a moment to remind people, Fox News was built by a serial sexual predator, Roger Ailes. Like, this goes kind of undiscussed.
Women weren't allowed to wear pants at the network until like 2016.
One of the most evil people in the history of television. Just a total and complete monster. Um, although Murdoch, we also need to Rupert Murdoch slips. He manages to slip out of view a little bit. You pointed out that earlier that the hosts are kind of interchangeable, right? Like Tucker thought he mattered, but he didn't matter. But he's dispensable. He didn't even realize, I don't think, that he was dispensable. Glenn Beck was huge on Fox News, and
I mean O'Reilly. I think O'Reilly had a bigger cultural impact than Tucker. Like Tucker was, you know, he's still relevant on the far right, but like O'Reilly, you had, you know, people in like the center that were like, well, you know, sometimes I just turn on, or like claim they were liberals that were like, sometimes I just turn on O'Reilly to see, you know, what he has to say. He has some ideas, like kind of like almost like a Bill Maher figure now, except no one had caught on yet. And Tucker didn't really have that appeal to, you know, a wider audience, but the appeal he did have was very focused. Like it was very effective. But yeah, I mean, they're still suffering a bit from firing him, but they, you know, they still have the numbers. They still have a shit ton of money. Yeah, I mean, all these hosts are dispensable.
And behind it all is this evil Australian billionaire. Like,
can I just say, I hate one of my least favorite things in the world is when people say the FCC should do something about Fox, because guess what? The FCC does not have jurisdiction over Fox News or any cable news channel. And there's like one of these like almost boomer type memes where it has a bunch of text and it's like history lesson, you know, in 1980, whatever, Rupert Murdoch came here and then Reagan eliminated all these laws. I did an entire series debunking this myth. But there aren't really any legal measures that the country can take against cable news. You know, Fox News, there isn't really a classification for cable channels, but CNN is in the same classification as Fox. They're all, you know, entertainment, if you want to call them that. And honestly, you know, the government shouldn't be responsible for arbitrating the truth.
Right. That's its own like set of dangers.
Even though there's so many issues with Fox News, and I think that there should be, you know, consequences for inspiring terrorism. It's not something that like the government necessarily is doing.
Bill O'Reilly probably got an abortion doctor killed, right? Because he did all those monologues about George Tiller and then shot him.
It feels like a you know, an Alex Jones Sandy Hook case is a really great example of how these things should go. But I wish that didn't happen in the first place.
And the election denial, Fox, actually, there was finally some accountability, right? Because
they had to pay a shit ton of money for the Dominion lawsuit.
Right. So let me ask you, what do people like you and me who are on the left, but who are not like you and me in that they don't expose themselves to right-wing media, is there anything that they misunderstand or don't really realize, or something that you've come to understand by watching so much of this stuff that you wish other people who share your politics would kind of understand or appreciate?
I mean, two things. And one is, you know, from the perspective of a monitor of this type of stuff. And the other is as from the perspective of someone who grew up conservative. A lot of people that watch this stuff that are very entrenched in right-wing media that consume it like it's, you know, the air they need to breathe. They don't care if they're wrong. If you have something to debunk their latest insane theory, they don't care. Their brain will find a way to warp around that and come up with an entirely new reality in just moments. I mean, you look at January 6th, or not January 6th, the inauguration, scrolling down on like Rumble, there were so many people that were devastated because Joe Biden wasn't executed right before he swore himself into office. And within like 30 minutes, probably less than that, like 10 minutes, those same people were like, well, actually, this is just a part of all the plan that Trump has to take over the world again, or take over the country, to take it away from Joe Biden. So they're able to shift their thoughts. They're able to keep the cognitive dissonance. And once you get a crack in it, it's pretty much, that's one of the best things you can do, is just get like one teeny tiny crack. But unless they're ready to face that, all of your, well-researched arguments and stuff, if someone's not going to take it in good faith, you can't make them. But also at the same time, I grew up conservative, and I think about a lot of people want to, lecture others or shame them, all of these things, from people that just genuinely don't know better. We do such a great job in this country of brainwashing people who are raised conservative. You're taught an alternate set of truths, and you have to relearn all of that when you realize they're not real. And that's hard. It's hard to admit that the things you were taught, the things that you and your loved ones believe or believed, are not real. That's difficult to admit. You feel embarrassed. You feel kind of lonely. It's confusing. And I think instead of trying to write everyone off, especially like in the South, there's so many progressive and liberal people in the South that are just being repressed by the same people who are creating that brainwashy type material for the well-intentioned people that are on the right there. So, not everything's lost cause. And I think a lot more empathy and realizing that these people are people. There's a whole system that's been created to keep these ideas in place would help people on the left a lot. It wouldn't need propaganda if we weren't winning.
So what you just said there gave me a couple of thoughts. First was on the subject of the failure of just fact checking. I've just been observing debates online between a lot of people on the right and those who are saying, oh, well, but the crime is going down. And the reaction is very interesting, which is, oh, look, the statistics are actually showing that crime goes down. And immediately it's just, oh, the statistics are fake. Right, the left is not reporting all of the crimes that are happening, and so there's a way of just dealing with it. You're like, well, actually, crime's good. No. Then the statistics must be fake. So you don't make your fact check with your little charts is just going to produce a new conspiracy about the making of the charts. And then on the subject of I was going to ask you what lessons had come out of your studies, for want of a better word, on how to fight this stuff. And it sounds like what you're saying is consistent with what I got from an interview I recorded recently from an ex-Jordan Peterson fan. We talked about the process of leaving Jordan Peterson behind and what it had taken to shatter his faith in this man. And he really believed that this man was a brilliant intellectual. And so to not believe that made him feel stupid, right? He had to think like, oh, well, I was a fool because I believed this man was smart and I didn't know how to identify a smart man clearly so I must be a stupid person. That's really, really not easy to come to terms with. And so I like that one of the, or two of the lessons that came out of what you said there are, first, we actually have to have some empathy for people who swallow propaganda. And then second, we need a kind of positive alternative that is more than just fact checks.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my favorite things in the world is when someone messages me to say that I've helped de-radicalize them. This is on video, right? Like this is going to be airing, or like you're putting it online with video?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So for people who are watching right now, when I came on, I didn't realize this was recorded. And so I went to reapply my makeup so it would look good on camera. And one of the reasons for that is because that is actually, I've received input from people that were on the far right that contacted me and said, I watched your videos because I had like a crush on you and liked writing like sexist messages in your replies. But then I was actually listening to the content because, they get like weirdly obsessive. It's gross. There are a lot of layers here, but at the same time, if that's what got you there, man, we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
That's obviously not the only reason I wear makeup, but it's it's one of those instances of like weird things can help de-radicalize people and bring them into not the fold, because that feels too sheepy, but back to reality.
Right. Well, you also use humor, right? And you're fun in these videos, right? You're not just you're kind of gleeful in your mockery of these things, and not just we on the left have a reputation for being, I don't know, downers.
Yeah, I mean, like, so as you could probably guess, I was a speech and debate kid, but I also hated speech and debate kids. I thought they were really, really annoying my entire life. But I still like competing in it because I was good at it and I like winning things. When I started doing the speech circuit, in addition to debate and Malta UN, I started to realize that the main thing that kids were doing to try to get their point across was be a huge fucking downer about everything. And it was like, this is the most important thing in the world, the thing I'm telling you. And that's great. I mean, that's one way to communicate, but the judges always had a way better time if you were like, hey, this is really important, but also like, let's kind of make light of it. Because otherwise, if the 6 people in your round in competition, if 5 of them are being a huge downer, you're going to want to laugh a little bit, because otherwise you'll want to cry.
Well,
also, I'm really bad at taking things seriously, just all the time, constantly.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Well, and how can you take some of the stuff seriously that you cover, right? There's not really a different way that you could react to the absurdity of. I mean, when I watched a video when you said you had like when you had a video of Jesse Waters saying the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue used to mean something in this country. Right? Like, that's just really funny. That's a funny thing to say so seriously.
Just very silly things. These people are serious.
And there's nothing more amusing than someone who has, a huge ego and who is incredibly confident about something stupid and wrong. Like,
yes, it's very entertaining to watch. If you divorce yourself from, the awfulness of knowing that people are watching this and thinking that they're being educated, it becomes really funny.
Now, I wanted to conclude by talking about some of the blowback that the work that you do gets, because, you are producing videos that are mocking the right and the far right. They're not nice people. They're really, really hateful, vicious people, and the worst of the hateful, vicious people like to post on the internet. Could you talk a little bit about the kind of the rage and reaction that comes from the kinds of critiques that you and that Media Matters does?
Yeah, so I mean, it's especially bad if you're, a woman that's in this space. Like, we have a group chat that's just called like Bad Bitches, and it's a bunch of women that are in this reporting space. We'll all report the same person. If there's like a rape threat that's really egregious, you can't do them all, because then you're not going to do anything else all day. But the blowback, I mean, they go for sexism. If you're gay, they go for homophobia. Ari Drennan, who's one of the most effective LGBTQ researchers I have ever met, and that's on the internet right now. She gets people that, try to dead name her, and she takes it all in stride. She makes fun of it, points out how happy she is and how unhappy these people are. But, it can get violent. I know lots of people who have been swatted. I know people who are currently living in hotels because their addresses, someone just showed up at their door. I make a point whenever I post something to make sure that there is nothing that sees out my window.
Wow.
When I'm in Texas, if someone asks what I do when I visit my family, I just say like research or whatever. I don't elaborate, because it's easy to say, oh, you're being dramatic, or this is ridiculous. But look at so many people in progressive spaces, And the threats that we get are not ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
There are, you get threats with people saying, I saw you at such and such place wearing this outfit. And that goes for like every individual that I know. And, institutions like Media Matters, they took great care of their employees, of making sure that their safety was a priority, making sure that, they weren't, if they were being attacked, that they had the support they needed. I remember when OAN was a big thing, they would put my coworkers' faces on the screen, and then they would have to go private on all their accounts because you just get a bunch of, OAN watchers flooding their DMs. They thrive on attacking because they don't have anything else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, and I mean, obviously, what we have discussed is the way that this propaganda machine, I mean, is trying to whip those people into a frenzy of hatred, and to get them to feel like people like yourself and your colleagues are, destroying Western civilization or whatever it is, that they are in a war against evil. I mean, they're told outright that they are fighting evil.
And like now with everything that's going on abroad, I'm Palestinian, so I get like a fun little addition on there. I got that before everything, but now it's like really bad. But you have people like a certain billionaire that owns a social media company, lives with TikTok, people like that, and they'll tweet about you, and they'll say that, well, it wasn't intended to have you targeted or anything. But that's what happens, and they know that. I mean, Lives of TikTok literally posed with a newspaper pointing out that everywhere that she targets faces bomb threats. Children's hospitals,
she's
libraries,
delighted by it.
Schools. She is delighted by it. And that because they know that when they say something, when they say such and such school is, hosting a parents' night for anyone who has two daddies, they know, she knows that place is going to get threats. Just like when, Tucker used to put someone's face on the screen and say their name over and over again, like instead of using a pronoun, instead of saying like, and he does this, Tucker would say, I remember he did one episode on Nina Jankowicz, and he just kept saying her name over and over and over again because he wants to get it in your head. This is the target.
I think we should emphasize, therefore, that while your videos are, as I say, gleeful in poking fun at people like Tucker Carlson, or, you compiled all the batshit stuff that Alex Jones said on his show, and then Tucker Carlson going, like, Alex Jones is so reasonable. It's funny. Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, Hai Reichik, they are psychopaths. They are really, really twisted, sadistic human beings.
Right. And like anyone that watches my full videos, both long and short form, like, yes, I catalog all this insane shit and I make fun of it, and I love making fun of it. It's so easy. But that's not the reason that I do it. Usually by the end, I have a point. It's, this is being broadcast into your parents' homes. This is being seen as acceptable by the GOP. This is being treated as an actual narrative that deserves actual credibility. And those things are concerning. And to get to that point, I use, the humor and the insanity to get to that point, to make it palatable, to make it digestible, because otherwise you're just going to want to spit it out. And I don't blame you.
And I mean, we may see Donald Trump return to the White House next year, and obviously that would fuel even more.
I'm already planning an outfit for the Gulag.
Right. Well,
Mike Davis, he's a cool one.
Might need it. No, I mean it's really deeply alarming. And just to finish here, the organization that you worked for a long time, Media Matters, they've waged war on it, and you and your colleagues, a number of your colleagues who did excellent work, were recently laid off in part because the organization, as I understand it, is fighting lawsuits from people like Elon Musk who want to destroy it.
You also have MMFA is dealing with the Missouri AG and Ken Paxton, who were saying that, you know, who are basically just taking over a support role for those same lawsuits, just adding on to it. And this is what they love to do. They love to dogpile on organizations or people or causes. But, you know, there's a reason that disinformation institutions are being attacked. There is a reason that, you know, pundits like to mock the term like misinformation or disinformation. Tucker used to love to do that. There is a reason that you know, they try to discredit basic fact checks or talk about alternative facts or just straight up ignore the reality of it and the research that these people put into it. And that's because it's working. That's how, if our work wasn't so effective, we wouldn't be getting, you wouldn't need to, if, I think the way that I put it in one of my videos was, you know, if we're such a non-threat, why are you launching a nuclear strike?
Well,
they're desperate to get us to shut the fuck up.
And, you know, certainly it scores a partial victory when they can get you, you know, laid off from your job. So people need to understand, the people who appreciate the kind of work that you do need to understand that without support, it can't happen. And so those who value that work, I mean, I constantly encouraging people, support independent media. If you don't support independent media, we see these organizations disappear. We see them go away. It will not last. Organizations like ours, Current Affairs is a nonprofit, you know, if people don't subscribe, there is no magazine. It doesn't come out, right? And the same with organizations like Media Matters, you know, they need your support or else they won't exist. The work they do won't happen. And so tell our listeners, readers, viewers, if people want to support your work, how can they do it?
Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Cat Abu. Sorry, I just like had a weird thing in the background with my cat. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Cat Abu. Also my TikTok, which is the same. I have a bunch of social media. You know, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's Threads. There's so many of them. They all have like different names. So you can just find my links on, you know, my TikTok or my YouTube.
Well, Kat, thank you so much for joining us on Current Affairs today, and thank you for the work that you do.